mass technologies are really going to drive cities, and if you have a smart city, that's going to then be the draw or the gravity for other, say, innovative companies and people to kind of migrate towards your city, right?
I'm Nate Benson, and this is Latitude. When Sam Marrazzo got his start in technology, it wasn't in a classroom or on an iPad. For him, his induction to cutting-edge technology began on the USS Independence.
I enrolled in the U.S. Navy, did that on a carrier for a little while, played with these things called F-18s, and I learned real quick how to become a boy to a man. It didn't take long.
From there, Sam journeyed to companies across the country as a technologist, came back to Buffalo to work for Praxair, and is now the CIO of the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. This week on the podcast, I talked to Sam about his role at the BNMC, how we can achieve smart cities, and what's the deal with 640. Sam, how are you today?
Pretty good, Nate. How you doing?
I'm doing well for Friday morning. For those who don't know you, give us the quick pitch of who you are and what you do.
I'm Sam Marrazzo, and I'm the Chief Innovation Officer for the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, and I'm here in support of the community of startups, big companies, small companies, anyone that basically wants to take a risk and be creative in their business, and that's really what I help you with.
You're also kind of the unofficial tour guide. I always see you giving people tours of the building and talking up everything, all the great things happening at 640.
Yeah, a little bit of a tour. Yeah, there's a lot of tours going on. So you'll see me pointing, and some folks like, why are you pointing at? I'm like, well, I'm pointing at all the great things that are going on here.
Right. What was the journey like getting here? What was your background to kind of that brought you to this Chief Innovation Officer title?
Well, I grew up in Buffalo, right down the street, not far from here, and then I decided to take a career when I first got out of school. I enrolled in the U.S. Navy, did that on a carrier for a little while, played with these things called F-18s, and I learned real quick how to become a boy to a man. It didn't take long. Then I said that wasn't a career for me, so I enrolled, came back, used all the great benefits of the military to go through school, and took care of that schooling, and then I took a job that was working for basically a border crossing company, and that really propelled my career in something called e-commerce technology, and then the rest is history. And I left the area for a while, and when I left, it was on the West Coast and all over the U.S. And I said that's getting old, and I just I used to go to these Super Bowl parties and hang out with folks that are close to Buffalo, but is Ithaca close? Right. Kind of. So we find
the quote unquote Bill's bar.
We'd have Bill's bar and Bill's parties at the house, and we'd make our pizza, and everybody kind of started. It was kind of the weirdest thing when you're out of town. You kind of align with people who are like Bills fans or West New York fans, but then you don't become close to local fans or local people. And I'm like, well, what? So every place I went, it was the same kind of scenario. So I'm like, said to my wife and family, well, my kids are babies, let's get back to Buffalo. And so I landed at Praxair, and then Praxair took me on a journey to really have a lot of, I pretty much touched every technology you can imagine with that great company. Yeah. So that's kind of a little bit of the journey.
Back to the Navy, is working on an aircraft carrier as cool as it sounds?
It's scary. It's pretty dangerous, and you work a lot. And you pretty much what's great about it is you work 16-hour shifts, and everyone just basically is on a mission to protect the country. But the hardest part about it is sometimes it doesn't smell that great.
I can only imagine, and of course you have nowhere to go because you're in the middle of the ocean. So
yeah, you learn how to cope, or you learn how to, you just don't, and you really learn how to just deal with a lot of problems, but problem solving is where I really learned how quickly to problem solve. But the other thing is, I really have learned how to interact with diversity of different cultures, and that was really important because to survive on a very tight, closed ship, 5,000 crew members, it's not so simple. So. It was definitely a lot. It was fun, but you do your thing, you get out. But it was a good experience.
So joining BNMC as their Chief Innovation Officer, why did that make sense for you?
What happens for over the years when you work for corporations, like Fortune 200 corporations, you end up becoming this corporate, kind of being, and you don't really come out much. So if you look at all the corporations locally, they do come in and they share some things, but they really don't embrace and try to help, other community members or bring other technology kind of concepts and mentoring, outside their organization. So I believe that because I'm very, I like to, I enjoy the community, I enjoy STEM, I wanted to give back and to kind of try to propel a lot of these great startup companies to more of an industry approach versus, there's startup in that, and then there's this thing called scaling. So, if you ever hear me talk about I think startups will scale as soon as you go through your basically 0 to 4, education step series. Mm-hmm. But we all want everybody to be successful here, and I think I can give back to help companies scale with some of the experiences I've had with, lifelong experience working for these Fortune 200 companies. So I think what happens when you work with big corporations, you just become like, all there is that corporation. You've really focused on that ship or that mission. And here, there's so many smaller missions. So I want to just be able to help a lot more organizations thrive.
It's a similar story with so many, seasoned career professionals who are now shifting their focus and joining startups because, they kind of get bogged down in that corporate culture and that, I hate to use the word bureaucracy, but like there's the corporate element of any large corporation, right? And, you're seeing seasoned professionals, really embracing the kind of startup culture, so to speak.
You are because, it just drives you, right? So everyone's like on this, 20 years ago, we were afraid for our jobs, we'd sit there. Now we're like, everyone's on a purpose. It's like, hey, what do I do? Do I work at a corporation? So I was just reflecting on this. I'm coming down the stairs. The story I want to tell is, I walked into the CFO's office, at Praxair, and he's got all these monitors, he's checking all the stats of the stocks, and I'm like, and then
charts everywhere.
I'm like, where's your kids' pictures? And that's how I am. I'm basically, I just kind of a crap disturber, right? And I'm like, I look around, I'm like, do I really want to work for this guy? I mean, at the end of the day, if you look at what your journey is, if your journey is to, drive, and that's great, but man, you're just going to you're going to say, hey, I'm going to reflect back at my time here, and you're going to look at stock pictures, and he doesn't leave his office. No one even knows who he is, right? And I think everyone has to be able to leave some kind of mark on society. And rather than writing checks, where a lot of folks just, hey, here's your check, and I feel good about it. I think you need to get in there and change a tire with these folks and just hear their stories and help them drive to an idea, maybe help fail together. But I think a lot of that. I think that's really important for those executives you talked about. Is they need to find that purpose rather than sitting and kind of going through the blahs. Okay, it's going to move a little, a couple, percentage points. Then what? I mean, so I think that's one of the reasons. I see. That's my little story about that.
Yeah. So day to day, being CIO of BNMC, what does that entail? And is it different than what a CIO at, like you said, a Fortune 200 company would do?
It definitely is. So it's a chief innovation. So I was a CIO, but the chief innovation officer is basically really focused on megatrends of technologies, right? So there's a myriad of. So there's of course blockchain. Everyone's really excited about it, but that's kind of like an R&D. It's coming up the cycle, the hype cycle. It's called, right? So I get excited about things like augmented reality, AI, deep learning. So what we try to do is we align these technologies either to your startups here or to large companies. So so right now I have a class here that I co-teach at UB, and we kind of we use DIG to bring our companies, like local companies, say for instance it's City of Buffalo, and we're teaching how do you use drones to do an inspection of a home with an infrared camera, right? Rather than having someone climb up a roof, with this technology that's basically called the mega trend, how do you basically disrupt these traditional roles? So really what I'm looking for is taking newer and newer technologies and applying them to a business problem. And that's one of my roles. Of course, there's other things at BNMC that have to do that are basically, blocking, tackling upstairs, but mostly the great part of this role is helping companies align with these megatrends, and there's like 5 or 6 of them, and one of them is smart cities. Eventually, we're gonna, I'm working on a project there as well, but we can talk about that in a minute.
Well, let's get right into it. What's new in the smart city landscape?
Well, a smart city is a place where you're leveraging an Internet of Things to determine if, what's the actual, the movement of people and places, kind of a movement of shape. There's also cameras, there's a Wi-Fi, and there's, 5G. All those things are they're mashed technologies. Mashed technologies are really going to drive cities, and if you have a smart city, that's going to then be the draw or the gravity for other, say, innovative companies and people to kind of migrate towards your city, right? The smarter the city. Now, we're saying smart, but there's the city of Buffalo just brought in a brand new Luis Traveres, and he is a CIO from New York City. He's definitely progressive, and him and I are talking about how do we get from A to Z, and unfortunately, we're basically, if there was a letter before A, it's pretty much where we're at right now, right? Yeah, the pre-A, right? Or there's no negative in the alphabet, but what we need to kind of understand is where do we start. So, we're talking about it. They're just nascent kind of discussions around what is a smart city and how do we support it. So, you can imagine that a smart city would, you walk outside and, you'll know where the transportation system is and what time the subway or light rail, or whatever you want to call it today, is. You're anticipating that because you're getting up and your phone should tell you, well, it's about 3 minutes away. So you should pretty much be aligned with that. So that's one part of the smart city. There should be, basically understanding of, where you get off on an Uber, is, what the phone, the restaurants or services should tell you, well, I have this for sale. So there's a lot of interaction and sensors. It's all starting, though. We're really excited about working with UB, City of Buffalo, BNMC, and hopefully we have something called this basically autonomous vehicle, another mega trend. New York State has some regulations of not allowing autonomous vehicles. You have to actually have a police officer behind the wheel. I think that needs to change. But at the UB campus, there's Ollie, and Ollie's a vehicle. I've been on it before, and it just makes left turns. And that's still and they're still researching that, but the next progression is get it downtown. Imagine we had a smart vehicle here, an autonomous vehicle making right turns. So we start here, it gets off at the subway station, goes all the way down to get off at the Sabres games, just right turns. And that's where it would start. So that's all part of the kind of collaboration of smart cities, is just all these mega trends is really what's happening.
If anyone can figure out a smart way of just letting me know there's a massive pothole about 50 yards in front of me, that would save my suspension and rims considerably.
Yeah. That would be great. I think that's going to be an automotive thing, but that would be awesome. That's a great concept.
Why, in terms of a kind of lasting culture, we use, the startup ecosystem, but obviously the tech culture that you're a part of, why are all these conversations so important, and why do they need to move fast?
I think what's happening with we're seeing a convergence of business and technology. Every time you have a tech. So I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna put my head out the line here, but I believe that your future politician needs to be a technologist. Your future leaders, right now, if you go to a board meeting, they pretty much know the language of business. How many, this is my P&L, year over year, COGS, basically understand that language. What's happening is folks that are making technology decisions aren't technologists. They're basically looking at and they should look at the financials because that's part of the whole piece. But in order for you to become a disruptive organization, like ACV has been very disruptive because they were able to, it was driven by a technology, vision, right? You have a lot of your companies here are technology driven. They're leveraging technology to reduce the overall operating expense to disrupt some type of business. So I believe if technology is such a kind of a horizontal or kind of a would you say a required need for so many businesses, then we should be really focused on bringing in experienced industry folks that have technology as a background, because that's going to then solidify and mature companies much faster. Go ahead.
So, certainly the financials need to be considered for any project, but when you talk about disruption, You look back a century ago, it wasn't profitable to make a transcontinental railroad, right? It just didn't make sense. That's why it was a nationalized project, and then everything spurred from that, for lack of a better term. From a technology standpoint, similar things I would imagine should be happening, or would want to happen, because maybe on the front end it's not profitable today, but maybe 3 years from now, investing in this smart technology, the smart city, it's going to have huge dividends for a city.
I totally agree with that. Yeah, it's going to be, you got to kind of look at the future of where this technology is going. I mean, eventually our phone's going to be telling us, well, you're sick, or I see that you're spiking a fever. I mean, technology is going to be in everything we do. I mean, eventually, if we don't have an understanding of the current and future technology kind of trends, then how can you be how do you make those decisions in your business? I think the board members for years, even our politicians really don't even understand. The Zuckerberg trials, you see that there are a lot of our folks that are running our company and representing us as a people, as a population, really don't understand how important technology is becoming. And I think it's foundational. It's very important that, folks in a room, the more of these startups you bring into organizations and companies and, our 43 North ecosystem, the mentors need to understand the technology. I mean, every single time you hear about it, maybe very rarely of any of your companies don't have that technology background. So I think there's going to be some changes on boards, I believe, and it's really important to have. I mean, that's where I see it coming, and I hope that our next couple of presidents will be technologists.
So are you announcing your candidacy for some government positions here shortly?
Shortly, but I want to put out full disclosure. I cannot be president of the United States because there's two reasons. One is I'm too short. Number two is I'm born in Italy. I was born in Italy, so that's not going to happen. So
we can at least get you in the city or state government.
Yeah,
right?
if they'll let me. But I'm a mad scientist. They'll say.
640 Ellicott. What does that mean to you?
Wow, that's a great question, Nate. I think what that means is it's a place where we convene some of the most dense, experienced technology business people. There's a lot of drive and energy, right, that is happening here, that a lot of folks are like looking from afar, like, what is this place? To this day, there are people that have like, where are you? And I'm like, 640 Ellicott, and they're like, where is that? And, I'm
well, it's at 640 Ellicott.
Exactly, but what's in there? I'm like, there's, you basically say, we convene 43 North, we have, you just go through the same old kind of plan. And I really think that we need to do a good job combining all our marketing efforts to say, basically, what is it? Yeah, we are ACV, we are 43 North, we're BNMC, but it's 640 Ellicott, right? It's a community place that we can share experiences with the community that can come in and learn and grow, maybe go to dig to start. So think about how we spawn seedlings, right? At the end of the day, if someone wants to say, hey, I have I have a great idea and I really don't have much, dollars, I need some advice, you can start in dig. Right, and dig can start a kind of a pipeline to come in to graduate to 43 North or others. I mean, we have other ways to see your investment through to the promise, whatever that promise is. But I think it's so important to open the doors up and start advertising that no matter how big or how small you are, we have a community that will embrace your either technology or maybe there's education needs, there's employment needs here. So think about the density we are building in 640. And you look at it, we really need to kind of think about it as density for your dreams. I mean, I think this is, I hate to be so corny, we're not a dream catcher or maker, we're what you need in your career, and I think, or in your current state. And if you want to start a startup, you start talking here, and you have a collaboration. If you are basically said, I'm sick of being a corporate person, I want to be a CFO or a technologist for a startup. So I really think to have that address, I want to consider that 640 is a coveted address in Buffalo, and come in here it adds a lot more. Like it gets, I guess, a huge, would you say, creds to be at 640.
We gotta get shirts made. Everyone needs a shirt.
I think so. What do you think? So 640.
We'll come up with a design. We'll get just 640 Ellicott, and people are like, what's that? And then it gets that conversation going.
Yeah, 640E or something.
Yeah.
Then we'll have like ACV in the back,
Yeah.
and then 40 North, and all the other companies that are here. It's easy to say ACV but I mean I should credit everyone else because I do interact with all of them. It's just that there are so many to talk about.
I was gonna say before this podcast, you were talking with Sam from Immerse Games. So
yeah,
you know,
because
always-
I'm trying to get him a gig speaking at this Immerse Games, and I'm hoping that we're just because again going back to industry experience, I really can open up some doors. I have. I mean, I've opened up doors where I can, and it's up to your members and your startups to say how they cross the line.
Mhm.
The sales line's always difficult.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But our job is to open doors where we can.
kind of looking holistically at the startups. You being a technologist and a CIO, what are some of the pressing issues or concerns that startups are obviously so focused on their day-to-day survival and trying to scale that they might not see an asteroid coming at them. What are some of those asteroids, so to speak, that hey, a gentle reminder would be nice?
Oh yeah, I think what you're saying is, from a startup, kind of what advice or what do we kind of? So I think one of the things I want to try to help startups with is, they're very focused, and I think folks are trying to influence them, or sometimes as a mentor, you like to pivot a startup towards your kind of bias,
Right.
and and they get off the rails. And I think what's important is when we kind of let them go through 640 Ellicott, the doors. It's almost like, okay, let's focus. This is, and a lot of the mentors are very, very good. It's just that they have to ensure that our startups aren't influenced or off the tracks because they have enough to worry about, right? So, I see it. I see this. This is great for my business. Can we pivot it this way? Probably not, right? We don't want that happening because we don't want them off the rails, especially in their they're new and they're growing, and we got to keep them laser focused on their business. So I mean, we can't tell our mentors not to do that, but it's just a matter of there are opportunities. This is a great idea. It's going to change my business, but it's really how will it affect. So what I would like to see happen is mentors maybe change their business to align to the business optimization process that are provided.
Well, the concept of mentorship, especially to a lot of seasoned professionals in Western New York, is somewhat probably new in terms of like mentoring a startup, because obviously this startup thing is only less than a decade old here in Western New York.
Yeah.
So there's probably those growing pains as well, right?
Yeah, and I think it's almost like we had to give our mentors like kind of a
Mentors need mentors.
Yeah, I think so, because it's like I've done it before because I'm like, oh my God, this is great for this and that. But then you're like, okay, oh wait, you have to stay focused. So the word is laser focused for the startups in your organization and our mentors. It's understand their journey, because you don't want to take them off the path. The second thing, one of the concerns I have is basically working for corporations, right, for all these years, is corporations look at anything in a risk perspective, right? They have a procurement department, and they have things. So this company called McKinsey years ago came up with a study, and they said, well, you got to reduce the amount of suppliers you have in your book, and you need to have them very focused, and they need to have these kind of requirements. X amount of P&Ls that are black, not red. You need to have, again, this whole concept of privacy and security, make sure that suppliers, third-party agreements are signed. There's a lot of hurdles that happen in procurement departments. So for instance, when I introduce a startup to a large corporation, what ends up happening is you go through the gauntlet, right? Oh, nope. And I think there should be which is going to be a discussion with corporations, is a fast-tracked kind of right into procurement. Hey, this is going to be we know this is breaking our rules, but this is a risk we're taking. What the word risk is a bad four-letter word for corporations. But their procurement departments don't align with their R&D departments. So a lot of times, a lot of frustrations happen maybe with your organizations because the rules have been put in place for over 20 years, right? So procurement departments are required to follow these rules, and they're going to follow them. and they're going to ask for X amount of P&Ls, and they're going to ask you for I think you remember I was discussing this at a security summit, right?
Mm-hmm.
We have to kind of be more we need to prepare our startups for those questions that are going to happen during the procurement, would you say, Macarena?
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is privacy right now. One of them is auditing. And of course, P&Ls and all that other thing. And then you get through it, and you're through the promised land. But so, there's the supply and demand. The problem is in the middle. It's called the big, bad, ugly.
Mm-hmm.
And not all ugly, but it's the wolf of that they have to protect the mothership, which is a corporation.
Wrapping things up, looking at kind of the community, what do you think some of the next step needs are, to really bring to the next level?
I think what we need to start seeing is a cooperation with different, we need to align even more closely with UB and BMC to become like this large. They have a lot of assets and resources. We do. We shouldn't be looking at this as we have UB, we have BMC, we have.
Right.
All these,
all one.
We want one, and that's going back to 640L. It could be the innovation district, and I think if we start maturing this concept, innovation district, where we are all at one mission, rather than having these things that there's these counter missions, we need one district. If you go to Dallas or different parts of the country. I mean, Dallas is incredibly focused. They have a district, and they leverage Austin, Houston, and Dallas in this concept, right? And they all have one over kind of arching organization. They all work together. University of Austin, they all work together. And my hope is that we can somehow work together in some collective, whatever we call it, 640. I want to call it Buffalo Innovation District. And we take, then we can put projects in around, smart cities, bring in, because, the excited folks who are really looking to expand their businesses or need mentorship or new opportunities in technologies or innovations that come out of UB really needs. So, just like there's a 0, 1, 2, and 3, and 4, right? UB has the same thing, but they, commercialization is tough for them, so they need the land. So I think that is the most mature. That's where we need to be. And can we get there? Probably not right now, because it's just everyone's trying to build this thing, which is, we need to get together at the table and say, what does it take to build Buffalo, the innovation district?
Sam, if people want to chat with you some more, or they want one of your famous tours of the Innovation Center here at 640, how can they do that?
Well, you can reach out to myself or Dale Cotter. It's D. Cotter, Cotter, at bnmc.org. And she takes care of, helps me with all my touring. And once in a while, I'm next door here at this little place called Ulrich's, if you want to say hi. But
I see you in there often, so
once in a while. I'm just there I'm doing some research.
There you go.
And to me, there's a lot of there's a lot of folks there that convene from this organization, so it's great.
Some of my best ideas have been liquid lunch.
It's liquid lunch or liquid, whatever you call it at 5, liquid dinner. But yeah, that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And just, I'm always here to talk, and I'll try to be available as much as I can and give you some kind of advice. But most importantly is come see us.
Sam, thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. Thanks for everything you're doing here at BNMC and for the community, and we'll check in with you down the road. Thanks again, Nate. This is great, and I appreciate inviting us me today and BNMC, and have a great day. You too. Cheers. I want to thank Sam for joining me on the podcast this week. If you want to learn more about what he's doing, check him out on LinkedIn or the BNMC website. If you're looking for a job in the Buffalo startup ecosystem, make sure you head on over to the 43 North Jobs Board. That's 43north.org/jobs, where we have dozens of jobs listed each and every week from startups in 43 North portfolio companies and other startups in the area. Again, that's 43north.org/jobs. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast, and make sure you check it out on iTunes or your favorite podcasting app. And make sure you leave a 5-star review on iTunes. The more 5-star reviews we have, the more people who will see this show, and that's what we want here at 43 North. So again, for 43 North, I'm Nate Benson, and we'll see you at the next one.